Blessed love and peace. Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. This is none of one of them public service announcements. So I'm sitting here in the middle of doing some worky things. Work. In the depths of the earth. Distant from spiritual practice, which is the method of commuting home, heaven, on a regular basis. So, experiencing that at this moment in the depths. Now, amidst this experience, something is shared, something is communicated, something is explained, revealed, which is the entity, the challenger. It's not a contrarian thing. It's not a binary. But I'll just say the agency. The agency that is that facilitates much of the what is perceived and labeled as persecution in an earthly language and context and perspective. But just like the suspect stuff through for years since before, even before law school, but since I graduated from law school, but like who's doing this now? Malcolm X in his life, peace and blessings be with him. He articulates in his autobiography, it shared it in the film as well, that when he was experiencing the phone calls and the threats and everything else like that that lead right up to his assassination, he eventually communicates to his loved ones, kinfolk, family, that he's going to abstain from blaming the Nation of Islam for being responsible for the things that he was experiencing, because he is aware of what the Nation of Islam is able to do and what they're not able to do, and that the things that were being done were beyond the capacity and the capabilities of the Nation of Islam alone, at least. So he didn't speculate, from what I recall, specifically who might be CIA, FBI, da 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 da. We know that those agencies do those things, COINTELPRO, and additionally during that time. But he just says, like, he knows what the nation is able to do, and that the things that were being done were beyond that capacity. So he knows that someone else is involved with what he was experiencing. So ultimately, everything is Elohim. I mean, it's a manifestation. Bob Marley, everything else, doctors, medicine. It's just understanding the nature of the universe and just how the yin and yang are manifested. And it's not even, it's beyond even just like benevolence and malevolence. It's just understanding the nature of things. And when Cats is doing things that are high energy, that is high influential, like the body can only sustain so much. It's like somewhat of a terse comparison is like a rocket ship going into the atmosphere. Like it starts to shake and everything else like that. So anyways, that's just the nature of life, and particularly when kinfolk are doing things in their lifetime that are extremely influential. So it's not even, it's beyond the government, it's beyond conspiracy, whatever else, but it's manifested through those agencies, through those instruments. So, and again, it's not even a matter of being mad at kinfolk. It's just a matter of like this is the way it is. Like lightning in the forest, it hits a branch of the tree. Tree don't get it is what it is. So, and understanding it's part of the harmony. It's a cycle. Everything has its purpose. Everything has its reasons. Find the seasons. How about that? Everything has a season. Find the reason. Both of them joints. Anyways, so getting back to the point here, because memory, I gotta work on the storage capacity of this unit of technology. So, who's doing it? What's going on? Who that here? So what is shared with me just recently, fresh off the press, is basically a NATO-like intelligence agency. And this is not a conspiracy type of joint, whatever. Like this is actuality. So putting parts together, and it's not hate towards any NATO-like intelligence agency. It's just a matter of recognizing, oh, okay, yeah, there it is. So I say that when referencing Malcolm X about what the nation is able to do, what the nation is not able to do. I'm aware, at least further 20 years ago, what the United States is able to do and what the United States is not able to do. I learned further what doctors are able to, what doctors are not able to do. I know what religions are able to do and what religions are not able to do. I'm aware of what confluences of these different entities are able to do and what they're not able to do. And I know what the United Nations is able to do and what the United Nations is not able to do. It's not even a matter of like what the laws are, but just capability of like uh, action and reaction and further. So there are limitations to all these earthly maneuvers. I have an awareness about what the gangsters and the cults and all the other additional entities are able to do and we're not able to do. I don't know everything, but I know a fair amount. And a lot of that knowledge, like when we talk about the streets and everything else like that, it's not like matter like a book and like, there it is, all proof, right? Evidence. It's like you see it, you witness it happening. You put two and two together. You read between the lines. You stay focused and don't get too trippy about conclusions and presumptions and everything else like that. But then you're like, everything in this life, there's no 100% proof. So it's just we have to like look at probabilities and likelihoods and priorities. Like, is this even important? So all that being said, what is shared is I'm aware of what these different entities are able to do, particularly the United States government. And so particularly when we talk about like espionage and like measures like with what Malcolm X, Al-Haj Malik al-Shabazz, and additionally. There's basically the CIA, there's the FBI, there's the National Security Agency. There are additional entities. We can talk about the private entities like Blackwater, mercenary groups, and stuff like that. We can talk about high tech agencies, and additionally, but each one has, as much as its superpower may be, there's also super vulnerabilities and liabilities and limitations as well. And so the further advanced cats are in technology, the tendency is to be less effective and influential in terms of the politics and like diplomacy of interaction with others. And so it's oftentimes a matter of like consulting or providing those high tech services and specialties for a price. And then when we talk about price, now we're talking about government, because government has the infrastructure and the way to get things done amongst the masses and additionally. So it's, again, all these different entities have different parts of the puzzle. So historically, in the past century, probably like a few generations ago, the governments were like a main actor. We talk about Cold War, the espionage, the spies, and everything else like that. British intelligence, all the different secret agencies of the different nations and everything else like that. That's a primary paradigm or methodology of these types of activities of like espionage, surveillance, and additionally, in recent generations, it becomes like even with the nations, the national government methodology, it's still through the strings of the cults that are running the governments, and it can get twisted and enveloped and tangled in those kind of competitions in the backroom competitions, but that's been like a predominant methodology because the governments have the access to the big weapons, nuclear war particularly, and all the bombs and everything else before that, World War II. And then also media, credibility amongst the masses, infrastructure in terms of the utilities and residences and transportation, but also law enforcement, the hierarchies from state government, federal government, state government, local government, and then National Guard when necessary. And so the governments have this infrastructure, generally speaking, for the past century or so. Now at this moment, like things are done in a different way. It's evolving, it's changing. And so within the past generation, even since I was in law school 20 years ago, further than 20 years ago, like there's only so much governments can do. There's in the United States, the CIA has its purview, which is outside of the United States, like doing things in other countries. And then the FBI, which is the domestic joint. So each one has its own kind of protocols, its own limitations about whose territory they're on and everything else like that, what they can do in those respects. And I mean, there's the Homeland Security that is established 20 years ago, and all the, not like I said, National Security Agency. And so there are these different things. But um, what I observe in my personal experience is beyond the capacity of what the United States is able to do. Because even within all the different capabilities that the United States government has, with its big military and everything else like that, and set quasi advanced technology, there are limitations. Um, and one of those limitations is international. One of those limitations is accountability, because even amidst the puppet strings and everything else like that, there's still a certain element of accountability and limitation about what kinfolk can do, the agents can do, and the supervisors are able to do without um, getting um, the supervisors have to answer to somebody else, and so that can limit certain types of decisions and actions. And additionally, um, so the things that I experience in term talk about specifically, I mean, it's like the ability to physically detain a person, working through either the police or the psych ward element, but being able to actually be physical, and respond to those things. And so that's something that I experienced through the years, and it's not always exactly actually an antagonistic thing. Like, and that's the thing. Like, the government isn't like out to get me. Um, and actually, there's the agencies aren't out to get me per se. It's there's a push pull kind of thing where, like, there are occasions when there are other elements that have antagonisms, whether it's gangsters or otherwise, or another group, another cult or whatever, trying to make a come up, and observing me or whatever as a target of interest or whatever, or having some type of value, and then the government of the United States or whatever actually providing protection. And additionally, so I've said before, within the years, like, I'll walk on the street, and like, cats can roll up, and I don't know who them cats is, and they can be at me, or they actually can be for me. They can be working for kinfolk that I know and love, but like, it's just low key. So with the government, this is a lot of stuff going on. But the things that I experience, the things that I observe, involve, again, being an agency being able to physically detain somebody for extended period of time, immediately, like on the spot, through different guises, whether it's police arriving, or otherwise, but just having that capability, through whatever pretense of being able to physically detain somebody, remove somebody, protect somebody. That's one characteristic of the agency, the ability of the agency. Another characteristic is being able to infiltrate surveillance, um, uh, have significant influence, control, blocking capabilities concerning on communications, internet, and additionally, and there are a lot of agencies, government, private, clandestine, cult, and additionally that have those capabilities, and there's competition. And additionally, and my knowledge, my specific tech knowledge about that is very modest, but I have that awareness. And again, it's just a matter of understanding the nature of things, understanding the capability, who has that capability, and then who has the willingness, and then who, amidst all those people, all those entities that have that have those that have that check mark, that in terms of having the capability and a willingness, like a motivation to do it, then that means they're competing with each other to be able to do that. Then which one has further advantage in competing against each other? Whether it's the government competing with like some off the grid kind of high tech geniuses, so that have way higher tech capabilities than the government does, but at the same time don't have the muscle or whatever else to do a lot of the things that the government is able to do. So there's all these competitions that are vying with each other, competitors that are vying with each other. But surveillance, uh, uh, and again, surveillance of communication, interception of communication, manipulation of communication. Again, like, when you get in text, emails, and everything, how do you know who's doing what, whatever. So uh, that's another capability. So physical, physical like enforcement or not even law enforcement, but physical enforcement, tech and particularly communications capability, also a knowledge, diplomacy, like knowing something about the world, having like an agenda, having efficacy in communicating with other groups. And that's where one of the significant limitations of the United States is being able to work with other cultures outside of English, outside of Christianity, and additionally. And so there are all different types of agents that work for the FBI, CIA, and through the other different entities of the U.S. government and other entities. But in terms of like being genuine and effective in navigating and negotiating and building with other cultures and religions, is just by its own mandate. The United States is very limited in being able to do that by itself. And that's one of the reasons why it's like, yo, this is way beyond the U.S. government. Particularly, very off rip when I got out of law school, the fact that I wasn't put in jail, the fact that I wasn't put in a prison, and I was put in a psych ward shows that the U.S. government was incapable of keeping my path in its satisfactory guises. That it had to go outside of the government, outside of the law, in order to effectuate some type of behavioral control type attempt. So it goes to the doctors. That's out of the realm of government. And so that's what becomes increasingly revealing of the whole doctor medicine behavioral control realm. But eventually, like, there's limitations to what the doctor is able to do. Doctors don't have directly police to do the law enforcement, don't have the weapons, don't have actually police. Doctors do have certain amount of diplomacy in terms of international, and it's actually probably maybe even further than the government, actually, the U.S. government. But doctors also abstain from having the statecraft of governing people. And also, doctors are under the influence, under the leverage of corporations, pharmaceuticals, hospitals, and health organizations, insurance organizations, HMOs, additionally. So doctors don't have the power to like, don't have a lot of those puzzle parts to do like the comprehensive business of like governing and ruling. And so again, become increasingly like one of those consultant kind of specialist type of joints, highly specialized, highly influential and powerful, but at the same time leveraged. Also, doctors don't have currency. Doctors don't have a medium of exchange that to access and to influence the behavior of masses like the government does with money. So those are some of the limitations of doctors. So, and again, doctors have less of a motivation. Doctors are less involved in like civilizational evolution and competitions, and additionally, like governments are. Doctors actually are involved in that, but it's coming from at this point ancient Greco culture, and additionally Hippocrates, the whole academia kind of experience, science itself. So there is that thing, but it itself is also very limited, and less. All right, so I'm kind of just like riffing at this moment, but the whole thing is like recognizing the limitations of each of these different agencies, and observing what I experience, what is done to me, what is done in front of me, what is done with me, what is done from me, what's able to manipulate me and guide me to do things of my own personal quote-unquote volition, participating in events, and additionally, and that also is significantly beyond the capacity of the United States government. When I talk about when I'm in terms of like the things I do with the interfaith movement, as a interreligious ambassador, and additionally, that's significantly beyond the capacity and the capabilities of the United States. Even just having having a literacy to function in that realm, but then also to be able to do it effectively, to like manipulate and to know what it's doing. It's way beyond the pay grade of the U.S. government and the United States itself as a whole. So now we go back to Europe, and then we go back to like the roots of the U.S. And those that do have that knowledge, that an increasing amount of literacy, we can look at different institutions in Europe. And at the moment, I'm thinking of a number of specific entities, but I'm saying from like calling out those joints at the moment because that's not the purpose of this at this moment. But there are collectives, there are kinfolk, there are cults, there are crews that have significant knowledge about world civilization, literacy, and efficacy in diplomacy, establishment within institutions, long-standing institutions, credibility, influence within leadership, world leadership, and additionally, um, and in that realm, beyond the national kind of thing, we get into like the competition between East and West. There's obviously the colorism between the polarities, between the equator and the polarities. That's less of a primary or predominant like factor in terms of it's huge. Actually, it's beyond geopolitics. It's greater than geopolitics. But in terms of the intentional strategies of geopolitics, it tends to be East-West type of thing. Eurasia, Middle East. Um, so in the Western Hemisphere is kind of just like an extension of that. Native kinfolk as well, native colorism. Those are things that are like beyond, way above the geopolitics, but don't. Anyway, all right, getting a little bit out there in terms of the purpose of this joint. So looking at all the conditions, at the capabilities, what I observe, what I experience is beyond the capacity of the United States. One of the things also is, and this is important, my experience with agents. I've experienced very clearly, very very obviously, dealing with many different types of agents. And I'm talking about CIA like agents, FBI like agents, informants, actual staff, and Secret Service kinfolk who approach me and identify as such. So through the years, in many different types of scenarios and situations. So, but then also like being approached by kinfolk will be like, yo, hold up, how is this person like just all of a sudden out the blue has this information, is doing these things, and then like when doing some backup, like wait, hold up, their story is actually checking out. Wait, hold up, no, still like okay, they got serious connections. I meet many kinfolk like that, and from young 20, 30 somethings to older, even householders, elders, as well as youth, youngsters who are like, oh wait, this cast on something, like this one is an agent, and again, it's not hate, it's just understanding. Okay, what's going on here, and so again, with many of the agents that I experience in through the years, and even within recent years, the type of training and preparation that is evidenced within the skill set of the agents is beyond what the United States is able to do, what the United States wants to do, because to have that type of skill set is like doing what I'm doing, that the United States perceives as threatening, or the influencers or the cults or um, the plutocrats of the United States, what the plutocrats of the United States perceive as threatening. So it's like training people to do things that, in order to become what is trying to be thwarted. So there is strong confidence that it is beyond the capacity of the United States to have that type of, because it's antithetical to the United States. So, anyways, who can even to do it? Places within Europe have that type of sophistication, have that type of like that primordial. This is primordial, but that type of civilizational patience, that civilizational understanding of like next 7 generations type of mentality and preparation and intentionality, The United States is that it ain't the U.S. It's not the doctors either, to be honest. With love and peace to all. So again, we have to go back to like some of the old school places, Europe, East Asia, and additionally, that have that type of capacity and capability. So, anyways, uh, in that realm, beyond the nation paradigm, where cats aren't talking about nation, cats aren't talking about presidents, they're not talking about elections, they're not talking about political campaigns. Cats are beyond that. They see, though, that's just like gossip right there. In that realm of world of civilization, there is, and there are levels to it as well. But at that one of the lower levels, there's still a significant binary between East and West. There's still a significant binary between religions, between Judaism, Islam, Christianity, and then also, even when kinfolk are able to transcend that and like build cooperatively amongst the Abrahamic traditions, then there's the East-West divide in terms of Abraham and India and China. And so there are institutions that are organized along these lines for being peace builders between different factions along those lines. But there's like, again, international, and then from the international it gets into the interreligious, but the interreligious only amongst Abrahamic Western traditions. Then it gets into the international and interreligious around the world. Those institutions are fewer. There are many, but they're fewer than the specific ones that I just mentioned. They tend to be, all right, I'm getting a little further off topic again. Um, when talking about agencies that endeavor to um, manipulate decisions and communication and activities at that realm, there are only so many collectives on this earth that have that type of literacy and capability. Uh, there's something else here to share. Um, what is observed in my personal experience, in these things that I observe, in these things that I experience, with agents, with the surveillance, with the interception and manipulation of communications, and additionally, there's still a bias that is evidenced, and it's particularly an east-west bias. Um, there are occasions when observing, like feeling, when the intelligence agencies short circuit, like when it's beyond either the capacity, the capability of manipulating things, or it's like actually like conquering the intelligence agency, and it being frustrated, the agent personally being frustrated, but the agency itself being frustrated because, oh, wait a minute, this is exactly what we're supposed to be stopping. um And so those type of experiences, like when there's like a conquering, when there's a short circuiting of the intelligence agencies, again, speaking beyond the language, um, and practicing a patience and a compassion and an honesty, yo, that's like the deep dive. Like I mentioned, the rocket ships going beyond the atmosphere, but honesty is like deep diving into the ocean. It's like how much can cats take of truth. um, and when someone is committed to truth and revealing everything about themselves, anybody who's trying to like get at them, like the truth becomes evident around them too. And so that's why the conspirators keep a distance, because the closer conspirators get towards a truth liver, somebody who lives truth significantly, intensely, it's infectious, and the truth of the things that the conspirators are doing becomes increasingly evident around those conspirators, and thus the conspirators become increasingly vulnerable to the competitions and everything else around those conspirators. So the conspirators want to keep a distance from someone who is intensely living truth, because the nature of it, um, it's light, and everything gets lit up around the kinfolk accordingly. So um, when the agencies experience that, one is with, again, like speaking a language, because that interrupts, that causes disturbance within the communications, the actual communications, of the agencies. So that is something that is witnessed and evidenced, the short circuiting of the intelligence agencies. Again, being patient, not getting angry, not responding to things with violence or hatred or accusations and otherwise, but just being calm. That's another way. And the short circuiting isn't a matter of like, again, conquering the agencies. It's not a matter of conquest. It's not a matter of enslaving agencies or anything else like that. Because actually, what is observed is like an awakening amongst the agencies, amongst the agents. I've had that. It's a trippy thing when I have agents like who have this like agenda perceivably against me, later come to me and seek guidance and recommendation. And additionally, it's humbling, um, but that's facts. So the purpose is not to conquer or to annihilate anybody. It's just to walk truth, a path of truth, and watch the seeds grow naturally. So uh, the reason why I say NATO intelligence, a NATO-like intelligence agency, again, because it does involve the United States, because a lot of the things that are done with me, to me, for me, whatever me, are often significantly through the years, through the auspices of people at least playing the part of U.S. agents, police, federal agents, and additionally. And so this entity, this intelligence agency, has significant influence to work through the mechanics of the United States. So that limits who that could be, effectively. And so NATO is an established international intergovernment agency, militaristic agency, something like Interpol, but militaristically particularly. Um, and each agency has its purview about what it can do, what it cannot do, its mandate. Just like the FBI, the CIA have the different mandates. NATO has its mandate amongst North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it's basically just a militaristic compact agreement contract between a select number of European governments, Northern European governments, and the United States, just to be a military compact. Um, and so it's kind of like a go-to entity when planning warfare, and additionally, just get okay, make sure it's okay with NATO. and this is on the part of the United States particularly, but once that is then going to the United States, or going to the United Nations, or going to other agencies, or going to other nations, or whatever else. But NATO is one of the first go-to kind of things, and so, and NATO is old school. NATO includes the old the rootedness, the ancestral experience of the homelands of Eurocentric kinfolk, and a knowledge about thousands of years of warfare. So that's intrinsically. Now, a lot of the governments have lost sense of that with the advent of the Republic and science, and additionally, but still, that's what it is. It's the culture, it's the energy, it's the vibe. So the United States is withdrawn, is divorced from that experience. The United States is out of its element in terms of homeland. So when it consults and connects with NATO, it is consulting and connecting with its ancestral heritage in a very primal kind of way. So that's part of the function and the nature of NATO. Even when presidents and additionally say, what is the purpose of NATO? And there's legitimacy within that as well. And this is not a promo of NATO. It's not against NATO. It's just a matter of just articulating this is a phenomena. And so when we look at, like, again, an agency that could be doing what it's doing in terms of having access to U.S. law enforcement and the other doctors and psychiatrists and get a court order like that, can get an order for forced deportation like that. There are only so many entities in this world that have that capacity. NATO or a NATO-like intelligence agency is amongst that. So the other thing is also, it done got dark. That means I can eat. It means I should eat. How about that? All thanks and praise. All right, so I'll finish this up. Just as an agency has its mandate about what it can do, what it's allowed to do, and just as it has its background and everything else about what it's capable of doing, technology, diplomacy, espionage, and enforcement, military, and everything else like that. All the different agencies have their different capabilities, and at the same time, each agency, and particularly the predominant the major agencies, that's a different way of putting it. The conventional agencies have a council that it answers to, some kind of supervisory entity that it has to answer to. So FBI, CIA, it's supposed to be the United States government. NATO, it's the collective governments of NATO, and additionally, so those are, and it's the official government leaders and the people who are tasked with those kind of responsibilities. But then also it's the plutocratic leadership behind those governments as well. But there's still a council. There's still like a collective that is like sanctioning, that is facilitating that agency to do what it does. So again, when observing what is done with myself, to myself, for myself, around myself in the past 20 years thereabouts, only so many agencies have the capacity to do many of the things that are done in an organized way, and then out of those agencies, the council that is governing and supervising that agency or collective of agencies is also out of this country, out of the United States. It's out of it's out of the beyond the realm of doctors and Western medicine. And so when looking, and it's not the United Nations. The United Nations is not. It's not like the United Nations is a front, or that's a strong word. The United Nations is actually very important, but at the same time, the United Nations is not the anchor. It's not the it's not the it's not where the buck stops. It's the theater. It's like it's the platform. Um, so that's not where the decisions are made. That's where decisions are discussed, um, and proclaimed. Um, but it's not where decisions are made. So, anyways, there's some. I'm trying to remember something else I was thinking about before, but at this point, we're getting into the wandering kind of element here. So, point being, for myself, it's just where recognizing it's a NATO like intelligence agency that has the capacity of doing these things that I experience in terms of communication, um, uh, surveillance, and I don't want to say espionage, but manipulation, perhaps, um, as well as the physical detainments, and uh, other actions in a physical sense, and also the interaction of with personal agents, with people who are trained to do things. So um, it's beyond the capacity of the United States. The United States may be framed and may be orchestrated to look like it's the United States, but it's not the United States. Um, and so who else may it be? It's a NATO-like agency because even amidst these even amidst these capacities, um, there are also biases. There's an agenda. There are selfish tendencies that are that are very biased towards and favor Eurocentric experience. So and also have certain aversions towards things that are outside of that. Islam, China, even India. So if we just think of the light goes on. Um, Even just thinking like the quintessential, like the prototype of a Eurocentric alpha male alpha household, and the different prejudices or different discriminations or different aversions, antagonisms, or perceived threats that the Eurocentric house has towards outside outsiders, foreigners. Again, religious, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Tao, Native, um, and in considering that prototypical Eurocentric household as an intelligence agency, as a council, and that employs an intelligence agency to carry out its will. Um, so the United States is not it. The United States is too limited. Very powerful in many different ways, but also very limited in terms of literacy and functionality in terms of diplomacy. And additionally, um, Europe is further attuned towards that diplomacy, and the two go back and forth. The two work together like NATO, and so that's where it is now. At the same time, it's evolving, and there's a recognition that um, of within the legitimacy of what I and I share, recognizing that I and I are not out to conquer Europe, are not out to conquer households, families, or anyone else. That we are here for cooperation, and that we have a very strong track record in that respect. All things in praise to the Most High, Elohim. So, uh, the one God known by many names in many different ways by many different peoples. So there's an evolving, there's a recognition within the Eurocentric core, within America, the United States, even around the world, of this necessity of finding a way to work with others in some way better than what is done before. And it's just facts. It's logical. It's natural, and there's that element of science versus nature, or not even science versus nature, but just like conquest versus nature, and perceiving nature as an antagonist, and committing warfare against nature. Someone saying something that like natural, that's not a universal experience amongst all kinfolk of the human experience. So, but that being said, it actually is. That's when people recognize and remember like who they are, what they are, material beings in this realm. Um, Nature is actually who we are and what we are. We each have a different experience of nature, and we have different proclivities and interests of what that experience of nature is. And some kinfolk are progressing towards being light circuitry, and very little materiality in terms of hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen, and additionally, carbon, and additionally, but just being other entities, perhaps off the periodic table. How about that? The periodic table. And that's natural. It's not the masses at this moment, from what I understand, but it's everything ultimately is natural. But at the same time, it's a matter of each element of nature recognizing the legitimacy within the other elements of nature, and as part of the harmony, um, and part of the oneness. So, anyways, there's an evolution. There's a continuing growing. There's an increasing awakening, towards not just the need of world cooperation and world literacy and world studies and discipline, um, but the different grades, the different degrees of that, and recognizing like some people are going to just continue to be native. Some people are just going to continue to be within their own particular fold and not be in the world, um, geopolitics or whatever. Just content with living, in the natural environment, the natural homeland, the ancestral homeland, and that's legitimate. Uh, and those that do have further proclivities outside of that, and that's not saying one's higher or greater than the other. Um, but for those who do have that inclination, it requires a literacy of the world. Um, the paradigm of conquering, of one element of the world conquering the entirety of the other, even that trope of as a propaganda for stirring up, the masses within one's own vicinity to try to like produce, increase productivity and innovation. Additionally, that trope is antiquated. Cats ain't buying it because the technology that's necessary to do that type of production comes from around the world, and kinfolk are increasingly knowledgeable, intrinsically, instinctively knowledgeable that, yo, wait, hold up, you're talking about conquering and annihilating the place where you're getting your advantages from? Huh? What? How that work? Against Islam, but you want to use algebra? You want to use bombs, but you don't like China? Huh? Huh? It becomes just silly. And so cats ain't buying it. Meanwhile, cats looking for something else, and need to eat, need are looking at women, and additionally, and so cats are still doing what cats do, um, but ain't buying the picture, the big thing, whatever that convention is feeding. So there is a need, for uh, for an increasingly honest, genuine, world view and world message from convention, particularly. Um, so even the NATO-like intelligence agency is other than an antagonist. It's not an enemy. It's just a matter of understanding. Okay, that's who this is. That's who's been doing this. Okay, now we can see. All right, we see what we're working with, and how we can work further. Because to be honest, it's still somewhat perplexing about like the rigidities, the obtusities of like, hold up, okay, this is like plainly obvious. Like you know this, I know this. Like let's just, but that cats is just on their things. Like they just have, it's so difficult to like Cats have blood oaths and sworn allegiances and everything else like that. The captain's going down with the ship, and we're not advocating any type of anything like that. But we just know that that's some things that cats are on, because that's how cats have been able to cultivate trust amongst themselves and have a certain order and hierarchy and have motivations along these lines, rewards, carrots and sticks along these lines. So like cats are deep in this type of game. So even just like the prospect of getting out that game, it's like getting jumped out the game itself. Like it's not even a matter of what we're talking about and seeing like, yeah, this needs to be done, but for us to do this. So oftentimes it's easier for kinfolk just to keep on doing what kinfolk are doing, because knowing the futility of it, and meanwhile like trying to guide the children, be like, yo, check out what's going on that over there. So whatever. NATO like intelligence agency. And there's intelligence agencies from around the world. Again, Middle East, India, China, Africa, other European agencies other than NATO. How about that? Native, and additionally, and working in many different ways. So, the world playing field is level. The world playing field is level, straight up, across the board, full stop. What up? The world playing field is level. And cats who don't believe that, who don't see that, they being run with game. This is slave mentality. African, European, Middle East, Muslim, Chinese, Indian, Native. It's a level playing field. The world is a level playing field. So all that anger, all that blame, that's self. That's self right there. Yeah, shit's hard. There's some nasty shit in this life. Wrong, heinous atrocities being done across the board. So it ain't just one group. It's not just one group that's catching it. It's not just one group that's throwing it. Every group is throwing it. Every group is throwing it. Every group is throwing it. Don't get it twisted. Our hands are dirty. If our hands are not bloody directly, our hands are dirty. So we're not condemned to the proclamation of out damn spot. We can do things. We can clean ourselves. We can clean the water around ourselves. But we all dirty. The newborn kinfolk are dirty, feeding off of the trappings, the fat of the atrocities. So that's not a green light for inflicting punishment or blame or anything else like that, but it's just recognizing all of us. So that's why it's beneficial to be very mindful of how much we eat from it, because the much further we eat, the further guilty we are. The less we eat, the less guilty we are. Now, there's a purpose for eating, and that's the times today. That's times in every day, any day that ever was. There's dirt. So when we do partake, the question is, what's the purpose of this? How are we utilizing this? How are we doing this? How are we utilizing this to benefit other life? That's the redemption. Yes, we say blessings. Yes, we give thanks. But we also do the works to utilize that energy, to put out that energy, to share that energy, that healing, that well-being in one way or another, whatever our gifts are to do that. So we give thanks. We share our blessings for the things that are provided for us to sustain our lives respectively and collectively. And then we utilize that to promote the well-being of others. NATO-like intelligence agencies are doing it the best way them know how. And when I see the conditions and the kinfolk, then I are able to share accordingly. To say, oh, it's you. Okay. Well, did you think about trying this here? Because, remember that time you did this over there? Yeah, I know who you are. Yeah, I remember you. Yeah, I know your story. Remember that time over there? What'd you think about that? Did you think it could be done this way? Did you ever meet so-and-so who's doing it over there? You might want to talk with them. They might want to talk with you. You can share notes. So that's part of the consideration. That's part of the purpose of this joint right now. We're going to keep it that, wow, just an hour. It was sunlight at the beginning. So with that, always, well, I'm going to speak further about His Majesty Haile Selassie I and Her Majesty Waisaman on this topic. Because we're talking about world affairs, when we talk about the United Nations, the League of Nations, when we talk about the old school, the primordial lineages, ancestors, His Majesty Haile Selassie I is King of Ethiopia in the lineage of Menelik, King Solomon, King David, Israel, with ancient diplomacy with the Ummah, the church, with India. The brethren Kadamawi Naif mentions in a reasoning I recently viewed about India being the daughter of Egypt, and I think he says Israel being the son, and Ethiopia being the continuation, the progeneration of the lineation. So, but anyways, just recognizing the relationship when we look at the teachings that are provided through the Vedas and its relationship with Kemet and Ma'at, and with Torah and the Gospels and Quran. So again, just look at the migrations, look at the geography, look at the topography, look at the garden, look at the flow of the water, and watch it for thousands of years, and see the migration of the peoples amidst those thousands of years, and how the truth, the teaching, is shared amongst the peoples. And we further see the relationship amidst these geographies and amidst these kinfolk, all the relations. So, we were talking about something just a minute ago. And we might let it go at this point because I have been fasting. I have been tired. Days and days with little prayer and meditation, and with a lot of sleeplessness, working and being energized by devices to the abuse of my body, mind, heart, and spirit. So it's beneficial for me to replenish some materiality, some nourishment, and work towards the completion of whatever is this precipitator of the abuse, and then focus further on the healthy, the well-being, the liberty. So I was talking about Ethiopia and Egypt and India and Israel. I was talking about I was talking about cooperation, something around this. I was talking about NATO. His Majesty Haile Selassie. Okay, so um, when we talk about those elements, about the old school joints, the old school knowledge, the diplomacy of the wars through the thousands of years, and the kings and queens, treaties, and lessons, the learns, the teachers for thousands of years. Um, that's part of the responsibility of the monarchies, the continuing monarchies of Europe and Asia and the Middle East and Africa and native kinfolk, the tribes, the clans of this land. So there is kinfolk have this knowledge, and it's heavy. It's like, yo. So His Majesty Haile Selassie is of that ilk, and in fellowships with the monarchies of Europe. Um, so when we talk about that evolution of cooperation, of being knowledgeable about the world, it's knowledgeable beyond just the advantages of technologies. It's beyond the knowledge of infrastructure. It's beyond the knowledge of weapons. It's beyond the knowledge of how to get things and how to do things. It's the knowledge of how to be, and it's a knowledge of how to be together. The responsibility, accepting that responsibility, not blaming it on others, not complaining, looking to ourselves. That's the sovereign mindset. Recognizing that and accepting the responsibility that I'm the one who has to do something about this. I have to find an answer. The other kinfolk have answers. Other kinfolk can share. Yes, let's talk. Let's reason. But it's for us to find that answer and to implement that answer. Ain't nobody doing it for us. So, sovereign mindset. And it's a sovereign mindset that is righteous, like we learn from Ming Ke and Kong Tzu and Lao Tzu. It's a righteous sovereignty that is empathic, that considers the well-being of others, and that leads by example, that cultivates those principles of timeliness and healing and well-being within one's own self, so that others can see that and live that accordingly. You don't have to tell it, don't have to write it down as a law. It naturally flows. So something that I continue to learn. So when we talk about His Majesty Haile Selassie and Her Majesty Waziramanen, we see the example of a king and queen. We see an example of sovereignty that travels and visits with other sovereignty, and that receives and hosts other sovereignty, that works with other sovereignty. And even when there are trials and tribulations and nasty atrocities, rather than being vengeful and wanting annihilation as retribution, it's a matter of reconciliation. When the dust clears, say, okay, let's rebuild. Remember this? Yeah, it was tripping right there. So let's acknowledge that. Let's let it go, and let's focus and commit ourselves to doing better. Because the king knows and the queen knows we need each other. We got to work to prevent the further atrocities, and we need the kinfolk who've learned the lessons to share that knowledge. So, we only got so much in this life, but we've got so much in this life to do. Tada and toda. So that's one consideration about His Majesty Haile Selassie. And then again, we're talking about world. We're talking about the League of Nations. We're talking about the United Nations. When we're talking about world unity, and we're talking about world unity, particularly from an Afrocentric perspective and experience. That experience is the colorism of much of the world, of much of the polarities of the world. We talk about the afflictions and the invasions and the abductions and the abuses, and additionally, and from that, the empathy, just like Bnei Israel in Mitzrayim, learning about slavery before becoming sovereigns, returning to sovereignty, living as as nomads for generations, righteous, staying away from the trappings that are going on in the different Babylons of the day, traveling from place to place where the grass is green. No territoriality. Now we just going through. We not in it. We don't know what's going. We ain't with this kinfolk, with that kinfolk. We just doing our thing right here. Don't mind us. Let's trade. We can exchange. If you want to learn something, we can learn. If you got something to teach, we can teach. That's a specific type of lifestyle. But then there's also the eventuality of arriving into a place, into a physical location, of settling as home. And like, this is our homeland. But to do that, we have to know those things about city life, about civilization, about being stationary, about protecting, about what happens when people settle in a vicinity, and establish city walls, what happens within those city walls. That's different than what happens in the field, where things flow freely amidst all the barbarians and all the other things. There's this further honesty outside of the city walls than within the city walls. And so it's necessary to learn the craft of sovereignty, the craft of sovereignty, before establishing those city walls. And so the most effective way of learning that craft of sovereignty is by being a slave, starting from the way bottom of the affliction and knowing what it's like and remembering what it's like, so you don't do that to nobody. That's Mitzrayim. That's the purpose of 400 years of slavery. So that we learn that from Torah, and we see that within today, particularly amongst African kinfolk. Now we can talk about what's happening with native kinfolk, which is a whole nother level, because that right there, it's not even, that right here is not even oppression, it's genocide. And that's a whole nother thing, because now we're talking about the world against the world, the imperial world against the natural world. That's what that is. And native kinfolk being an honoring relationship with the natural world. That's a different, it's a distinct path. It's all together, but it's a distinct path in learning the craft of civilization and learning the craft of it's all sovereignty, to be honest, actually. So one sovereignty is civilizational sovereignty, another's sovereignty. And this is, I'm not making this up, but I'm articulating these terms just on the spot right now as a distinction. So, and that's actually beneficial to consider. But the sovereignty I mentioned before, in terms of the city and the city walls, that is a civilizational type of sovereignty, earthly sovereignty. So there's a certain craft to that. Again, knowing about slavery, knowing about affliction, being keenly aware of that to prevent oneself from doing it and imposing it upon others. Empathy and compassion, altruism. Those are quintessential, because it's so easily lost within the city experience of all the different twisted logics and rationalizations and corruptions, and there's another one I'm thinking of, like degenerative tendencies. Um, and there's a word I'm thinking of, corrupted, degenerative, rotten, um, decay, something along those lines. But anyways, it's because of those proclivities that truth and compassion and modesty, altruism, empathy are so important within the city walls. Because outside of the city walls, it's not as necessary because if cats start tripping, they get ate up. You got to be on your P's and Q's outside the city walls. So there's no time for that luxuriant kind of like decadence and everything else like that. Yo, that's easy. That's yummy for the wolves and tigers and bears and lions and hyenas. So the concerns about piety and everything else like that outside of the city walls, it's not as much of a priority because it's the law of the jungle. It's the law. It's the law of that. So when being a nomad and dealing with both the barbarians as well as the Babylonians, um, there's a balance of knowing how to be and but there's always an out when particularly when dealing with the Babylon city kinfolk of like, yo, no, we're not claiming anything. But then once we do start claiming something, whoa, okay, now we got to be careful about that because then we avail ourselves to those trappings of within the city walls. So the experience of slavery, the experience of persecution and affliction, is and to continue to remember that is one of the strongest medicines and exercises to optimize the compassionate mind, the metta, um, when governing. So again, all that being said, when we look at today's geopolitics, we see Africa as having that collective memory. And not all of Africa experiences everything that all of Africa experiences. How about that? You got that? You heard me? He he he. But there is a strong cipher, a collective cipher, and a collective consciousness and a collective intentionality. Amidst all the biases and selfishnesses and games being run, there is that collective experience that is strong and that is distinct from around the world. Now, like I said, it's not a comparison. Every community, every group experiences affliction. There is a collective colorism around the world against darker skin because collectively within civilizational context is perceived as just being lower class, and additionally from India to China to Europe, and additionally less so in native kinfolk in the Western Hemisphere, but around the world and world civilization there is colorism, and so that just is epitomized within Africa. I mean, there's dark kinfolk in Aboriginal lands, amongst the Wurundjeri, as well as within India, and additionally even within Malaysia and parts of Southeast Asia. So we can look into the islands of the Pacific and further, but like it's epitomized within Africa. So because of that, ironically, paradoxically, and hallelujahly, there are gifts of empathy that are gleaned from that. Now, again, African folk can be and have the tendency of being as antagonistic and prejudiced towards light or fair skin. Look at that. You say pale skin, whatever, lighter shade. It's dark right now, and I'm tired, and I'm finishing this up. So, if you listen to recent conversations, by the way, or conversations, I said, wow, soliloquy joints, you can actually evidence the influences that are involved in my articulation to the point where I'm arguing against myself. I'm arguing with different influences within my life, different factions, and additionally. So it's actually interesting to observe, but because you can see it's actually even kind of lightweight scary because when you like see who's being actually like who or what that influence is, it's like Ika, who is this dude? Ika. Anyways, I'm me. Um, So on to topic and then completion. Come on. So His Majesty Haile Selassie I, coming from Africa on the world scene, League of Nations, World United Nations, um, African unity, having that compassion, having that sovereign mindset, having the compassionate mindset, having that responsibility of the well-being of all the kinfolk in Ethiopia, as well as all of the kinfolk in Africa, as well as all of the kinfolk of the world. Now, again, we have to be mindful and cautious about attributing so much to kinfolk that walk this earth. Um, Yet that is significantly of what is involved in the example, and it provides a foundation for many other kinfolk to join in the walk, to accept the responsibility, and to build and to share, so that it's beyond just one person doing it. It's one person doing it with other people who are doing it. That's profound mathematics right there. Um, so I was just listening to that statement. So that was nice. That is nice. Anyways, like the I'm starting to observe my homonymous tendencies, that meaning the multiplicity of the meanings of the words, so that even when one sentence is said, like so many different sentences can be gleaned and are gleaned from that one sentence in many different ways. I do that for years. Um, I remember being in law school. This is a side note again. I remember being in law school and I would say things, and I remember when I'm in law school being valued for my congeniality. Like I wasn't the most like the most trained proficient, to say the least, in terms of legal knowledge, or at least American legal knowledge. Like I wasn't that cat who's getting the firm gig and influential in wheeling and dealing in that respect specifically. So cats wasn't like championing me or valuing me for those purposes of trying to like get some kind of like benefit from associating with me or getting some insight of like along those lines. Wasn't the getting A's. I got one A in my final class. It wasn't even law school. Ah, yay. But yo, I probably had the lowest GPA, maybe lightweight, low key, the lowest GPA in the law school. So Cats wasn't going to me for those purposes. But at the same time, yo, I'm nice, and like I'm genuinely nice as much as I can be amongst sharks. Sharks. What would I be? I'm not an orca, because orcas are nasty and do sharks dirty. So I wasn't an orca. I was like a dolphin. That's what I was. I guess I was like a dolphin amongst the sharks. And the sharks were just like, yo, what's going on, dolphin? Literally, like that's what it was. I was like, oh, however the dolphin sound, whatever. That's what I was. That's what I am, I guess. Now I had the propensity of being an orca. I could like morph into an orca. Um, at that time, particularly. Today I couldn't do that because orcas are predatory, and I'm not a predator. I don't have that. I am a deer with the propensity of morphing into an elephant, but I can't morph into an orca. I can morph into a blue whale, kind of, sort of. But yo, orcas do blue whales dirty. Anyways, that's a whole nother soliloquy. But um, interesting how orcas leave humans alone often. And orcas are intelligent. So, I mean, obviously humans ain't got too much to eat. Orcas are known for like killing an entire like multi-ton blue whale and just eating a liver and leaving the carcass just to rot. Now, it all goes to purpose or whatever. So, but still, it's just like, yo, they just ate like a liver or whatever, one organ of this huge, huge beast, huge animal. The orcas tossing great white sharks in the air for fun. Not for fun, but that's humans applying the logic or perspective. But like the way orcas do things, yeah, that's nasty. So yeah, I can't be an orca. Orcas are beautiful, and love and peace to orcas. But anyways, and as we speak, here comes the flying squirrel. Like, yo, Peter, I hear you talking about, yo, where's the food at? Yeah, I done ate up the peanuts. I ate up the peanuts yesterday. I was gonna give them to the to the visitors, but also selfish. I ate a lot of peanuts. All right, we're talking about serious things. Haile Selassie, His Majesty, and Her Majesty Waziraman. So we're just talking about compassion, sovereign mindset, um, on the world scale, being true to oneself and where one comes from and the people that one has priority responsibility for, but at the same time, working with the sovereigns of the world to find genuine solutions and cooperation, respecting each other, being respected in return, and sharing accordingly. His Majesty provides the example when he goes to Sweden and visits with the King Gustav Adolf of Sweden, of Sverige, when he visits with the royalty of England, and around Europe, as he was a prince at that point, a crown prince. So that's who he walks with on this earth. Walks with the religious leaders, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the World Council of Churches. Again, I said before, Billy Graham, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and additionally, so he connects and builds meaningful relationship, serious, with the leaders of the world, regardless of what the politics are, and additionally, well, not regardless, but amidst all the politics, recognizing that's the nature and the responsibility of a king. It's not rebellion. It's not a rebel who can like say, "Oh, I don't mess with them," blah 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 blah. In this perfection of impotence, of not having the responsibility of actually protecting and providing for the lives of others. The rebel has a nice game, and this is not hate towards rebel, but this is a little bit of encouragement for Rastafari brethren to I don't want to say graduate. That's pejorative. That's condescending. But to recognize the difference between being a rebel and a royal, and when rebels are proclaiming to be apostles of a royal, but still proclaiming rebelliousness, and that meant that propaganda of rebellion and revolution, that's against the nature and the status and the responsibility of the royal. So there's a dissonance there, because it ain't easy. It's not sexy being royal. Lightweight. It's heavy. It's heavy responsibility. If you think about like being a royal without money, and just having the responsibility without getting accolades, without getting recognition, without getting celebrity status, without getting comped at the club or whatever else. Like you just do it. Okay, nice job. Do it again tomorrow, God willing, if you're healthy and you wake up. So, God willing, you do. So that's the nature of royal, and it's the heaviness. So, and that's the example of His Majesty. Not seeking for crowds, cheering and everything else like that, but just people joining in the work and be like, there's a lot of work here, y'all. There's a lot of learning to do, how to do this work. There's a lot of things to give up in order to get that learning. So that's the nature of the sovereignty. That's the example of His Majesty. And ain't no perfection on this earth. There's all different types of susceptibilities and limitations and everything else like that. But there's a lot of inspiration. There's a lot of guidance. There's a lot of truth. So even amidst the NATO-like intelligence agencies, even these kinfolk, even these entities have a purpose and a mandate to provide some type of service in this realm of world civilization. And so we just continue to encourage optimal cooperation, genuine, enduring, multi-fold blessings, cooperation, incalculable unpredictable manifestations of blessings, cooperation. without any promises, without any guarantees, without any ownership, but with an understanding, with an overstanding, with a knowledge, with a trust, with a faith, and with an experience. So, that being said, how about that? How about I just talk for another couple hours and then stay up all night again? Um, how about I not? Let's do something healthy. One thing I do is just wrap this up and break my fast. All thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim. Respect and honor to all our ancestors, all our prophets, all our sages, past and present, known and unknown. Respect and honor to His Majesty Haile Selassie and Her Majesty Waisarumanin. Respect and support to all our progeny, from the first siete years to the next siete generations, door for door. One heart, one mind, one tree, one perfect love supreme, with blessed love and peace in Rastafari. I'm going to do a test. I'm going to make a funny, weird face and see if this is what the social media is going to select as the thumbnail. Because I'll be looking at the thumbnails that are selected. I'm like, yo, come on. I'm animated, but come on, serious. For the most part, it's just like this. So we're just gonna test that visual algorithm. So